So you beautiful people, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to give you a no-nonsense review of Call of Duty Warzone 2. Now I've played the game intensively over the past week or so, and I feel like I've got to the point where I can give you guys my opinion about the game. Now you may not necessarily align with some of the views I've got about this game, and that's fine. Down in the comment section you can give me your thoughts and feelings as to what you think's good, what you're indifferent about, and what you think's bad about the game. It is very obvious that this game has split the Warzone community on who prefers Warzone 1 and who prefers Warzone 2, but there's a lot about this game that has great potential. But is it going to just remain as potential, or are they going to act on this? We'll find out soon enough. But the first thing I've got to talk about is, to me, this feels much more like a traditional Battle Royale game. Now, I'm an avid fan of Call of Duty, but also Battle Royale games. H1Z1 played, PUBG, Apex Legends, Blackout, the original Warzone, Fortnite. I've played all of them and put several hours into all of those games. And when I say feels more like a traditional Battle Royale game, I'm kind of talking about Warzone. One thing I felt Warzone did was dumb down looting. Everybody jumped into the map and all they wanted to do was get as much money as they could to get their loadout with Ghost, with a heartbeat sensor, and then pretty much spend their time sat in a top window like Homer Simpson, or in a stairwell in one of the taller buildings, just looking at that heartbeat sensor until they were categorically forced out of that building by the gas. Now it feels like there's much more of a premium on looting. If you do want your SCAR with all your attachments on, you now have to buy that gun in its individual sense. So you're going to pay 5k for that. If you want your sniper, you're going to pay more. So that puts more of a premium on you intensively looting, which organically creates more skirmishes and gunfights, which is only good for the midsection of the game. I love the fact that the map looks the way it does in terms of the color and saturation. It's a lot more vibrant and pleasing on the eye, because classically a lot of games that are in the battle royale genre tend to look very dull, very grey, and very depressing. The map seems to be spaced out quite well as well. There are plenty places where you can have a massive amount of people land and have some real intense gun battles at the very start of the game. Or if you're somebody that likes to start your game a bit more gradually and slowly move up into your weapons, you can land in little villages off the grid. There's a nice diverse mix of all that. There's something for everyone essentially. I love the fact that they've added the addition of a battery level on the heartbeat sensor, because I think that's something that got abused in the original Warzone. People relied on that too heavily, in my personal opinion. So now you've got to use it much more tactically to preserve the battery life in the game, especially for the latter parts of the game. And it's also the same when it comes to vehicles. I mean, down in the comment section, tell me if you've experienced losing in Warzone simply because somebody was driving that truck with a trophy system on top and they just run you over at the last part of the game to your infuriation. That's one thing I absolutely hated about that game, and I'm just so grateful to see that they've actually, which is a suggestion I've made previously, put a petrol gauge on these vehicles now, because it brings that double jeopardy back to the game in terms of you've got two scenarios with vehicles now. You can drive a vehicle, or pretty much all game, and it's either going to break down and possibly put you in a situation where you're in the middle of nowhere and you're a sitting duck, or you've got to go and refill and you've got to be stationary. Someone's already seen that vehicle driving towards the petrol station, and now you're on edge because you're filling up and you know there's a possibility that you might get attacked. I love it. It gives you really got to think about if you're going to take a vehicle now, but you are rewarded still if you do take one. One of the most golden things that has ever happened in Warzone is the proximity chat. This adds such a comedic layer to the game, and also a tactical one as well, because quite often people have their mics open, forget that they're in a situation where they may be stalked, and quite often give away their position. And I love the dynamic that you can either stay silent or you can be a troll and start talking down the mic. Hello, I know where you are. It really brings a good sense of feeling when you're playing the game. And that's one of the things, major things, that has been making me come back to this game. Now, we've got to talk about these other things, but I'm going to put them under a subheading, which is going to be skill gap compression. And you could consider these to be where I'm indifferent or negative about the game in terms of my feeling. So true game data, absolutely brilliant lad, does a lot of research and a lot of intensive work on the stats in the games to give us a clearer picture as to how things work. Has recently stated that the recoil in Warzone 2 is randomized, something I've definitely felt like I've felt. And the argument for this is it stops Cronus Maxes being abused in the game because they use scripts that utilize the recoil that is predictable to make that recoil pretty much non-existent for users, and they can't do this when it comes to randomized recoil. So there's an argument for both, but I'm going to be a lot more sinister and say this is purely done because of the other things I've seen in the game as opposed to what was going on in the original Warzone. It's been done to level the playing field, because for those people who are willing to put in the time to learn recoil patterns in their muscle memory, they're obviously going to have an advantage over lesser skilled players. And the easiest way to level the playing field is similar to Fortnite when they had Bloom, is to put a randomized recoil pattern, although you still can technically learn it, but it's just not going to be as effective. The time to kill in this game, as we're talking about skill gap compression, is insane. I've been lasered with one bullet where all of my shield has disappeared, and I feel like I just can't react to that individual that is shooting me, and that's definitely a step in the wrong direction in my personal opinion. I think the health and the time to kill in the previous Warzone was in a really good spot. Now, I have a feeling that they've gone back to the 100 health that Warzone originally had, as opposed to the 150 that pretty much the entirety of the community voted for. And I think that's a real step backwards when it comes to Warzone. Talking of plates, when you snipe someone in the head, they don't go down, you just kind of shatter their plates. And I think if you're sniping someone from 250 meters away, it is really, really disheartening to see you've put in all that accuracy and time to take that shot, only for you to not be rewarded for that. And I think that is something that is just kind of a middle finger to certain people who enjoy using snipers in this game, and especially when it comes to solos where you haven't got a teammate to bounce off and say, I'm going to snipe this guy, you need to take shots on them. Also, plates again. It seems as if you can't run away from people and replate now, because trying to put plates in while you're running doesn't exist in this game, and it's just one of many movement mechanics that I feel have been dumbed down to the detriment of the flow of the game. Movement is something that is subjective. I know a lot of people hated all the movement that you could do in Warzone, and I feel like they've could have compromised still on that, but they've just turned the gauge too much to favor the other side. It could be balanced in the middle, where there is a skill gap if you can learn the movement system, but you are not heavily penalized. One game I really love in terms of its movement, and it's strange because we've got a nice mantling system now where you can do some really funky stuff, is Apex Legends. You excel in that game if you can move well, and I feel like there was things that were abused in Warzone 1 that I think they wanted to take away, but they've taken away too much of that from people. The attachments in the gunsmith seem to penalize you for every single thing you do, and it tends to penalize you by the looks of it for either your movement speed or your aim down sight speed. I just feel like everything has been done in an attempt to slow aggressive players down and kind of nullify them. Now, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to jump into the comment section and say you need to adapt. As somebody that's played this game for most of its life cycle when it's become popular, and someone who I believe has helped make this game become popular, I find it quite ironic that I am being asked to adapt when the game has been watered down because certain individuals could not adapt in the first place, and to get them into the playing field and the battlefield, they had to dumb this game down. So I find it ironic that certain people pipe up when it comes to that, to tell me as someone who's a long time player of the game to adapt. But anyway, I digress. The other stuff in the game that I've got to speak about is the backpack system. I think this is an unnecessarily awkward layer that has been added in for no apparent reason other than it's kind of copying games like PUBG, where you've got a backpack and you need to increase the size of it, and it just makes no sense to me why we've got backpacks in the first place. All it does is convolute the system as to when you've downed somebody and you're looting them and you want to loot them quickly, it puts you in a more vulnerable state, which I suppose I could tack on to the skill gap compression again. I want people to die like Warzone originally and just spread their loot on the floor, and I can see visually what I want to pick up very quickly and what I want to leave, so I can move on and get into the next skirmish. I think the backpacks are just highly unnecessary in this game. So we've got to talk about the likes of the AI that's been added for the strongholds. Now, me personally, not a massive fan of AI in these kind of games. Every enemy I come across, I want them to be somebody that is worth killing, because I know they potentially can kill me. And all I think the stronghold does is make you have to do that double take moment where you've saw them and you've had to consider whether you shoot them or not, because you're going to bring attention to yourself, only to realize you've lost focus because it's an AI bot and there's actually somebody that is coming up on you that you didn't realize that you actually needed to pay attention to. And I know you can avoid them and they are highlighted on the map, but I just think they're unnecessary in my personal opinion. I hate the fact that when you ping something, the colour of your player doesn't come up straight away to let your teammates know who's pinged that and where we're actually going visually. I find that all of my teammates find it hard to visualize the ping and have to ask me or totally zoom out of the map. And these come down to all of the quality of life changes that were made in this game in the original Warzone. The biggest complaint I have about Warzone 2 is for everything it's done good, I think we've taken 10 steps further back, because we've had all the quality of life changes that made Warzone later on to its life cycle a very polished feeling game, whereas now it feels like we're back to square one, where we've got to wait for the developers to make all these changes so this game isn't stuttering all over the place, isn't dropping frames, isn't hitching, and isn't kicking me out when I'm in the top 10 to my absolute frustration, where I don't want to play the game for the rest of the day. They're my biggest complaints about the game. But overall, I think there's so much potential in this game. There's so much strategy that is going to be involved. Technically, if you put yourself in a bad position in this game, you will be heavily punished. And that is my favourite portion of most Battle Royale games. Instead of running around the map like headless chickens, driving around like you did in the #1 Warzone, this game feels to me that you have to value your life just that bit more, but not be absolutely shit scared to sit in a building. There are going to be people that do that in Battle Royale games. That's just the nature of the beast, and that's why the gas tends to be randomized. And talking of the gas, that's one thing I forgot before we end this video, pretty much. When the gas splits, is it me or does it just always tend to end up right bang in the middle of the map? They definitely have to do some fine-tuning in this game, and overall to me, I would say, looking at what I'm playing right now, Warzone 2 should have categorically been delayed until next year. They should have released it in March like they did with the last Warzone, but we all know why that happened, why it was released now, because Activision have shareholders that they've got to appease and make those quarterly meetings a very jovial and happy place to be. So down in the comment section, guys, I'll ask you just to give me your good, your indifferent and bad. It doesn't have to be a shopping list. It can be very short, but it can be as long as you like it to be. Just let me know down in the comment section. Guys, there are many buttons you could hit, but a like and subscribe button, I'll update to your fancy. And as always, guys, Don't forget to stay on the right track. Peace.